Managing and improving your online brand. Hi, I'm Ralph Henderson. I'm the host and executive producer of today's Global Supply Chain Marketing Group show, a professional development program for supply chain professionals like you. Brought to you by Supply Chain Brain Media. Welcome. Your online presence is vital to your business's success. In the supply chain, that's more important now than ever. It impacts not only marketing, but sales. And get this, it also impacts recruiting, trade show effectiveness, business opportunities, and partnerships. The online presence is really defining how people see your business and how we bring our brand to life. In this session, you'll discover how supply chain businesses use their online presence to their advantage. We're going to learn key online touch points that are vital to developing our brand. We're going to discover how others perceive our business and our online presence and the impact with the overall marketing efforts. So, what are we going to get out of today? Well, what we're going to get is how important brand is and how important building one is. We're going to evaluate our current presence. We're going to talk about key touch points to growing it, which is super important. Growth is the mindset we must have this year for the next 12 months. And we're going to talk about things like SEO, reputation management. We're going to talk about PR, social media, and stay tuned because we're going to promote the SEO in a future episode, and we'll talk about that later. And then finally, we're going to talk about how connecting our online reputation to the rest of our marketing efforts is what's going to make us different going forward. We are going to take questions today. We have the Q&A panel open, so make sure you ask questions. We certainly want to get as many of those as we can. And we're also going to open up the chat. If you want to chat with me or our guest today, you can certainly do that. And I will look forward to hearing what you have to say. So with that, who is going to be teaching us all this? Good question. Today, we are very privileged to have Krista Naher. She is the CEO of a company called Boot Camp Digital. Krista is a six-time best-selling author, international speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, global thought leader, and Krista has written more books on digital marketing than most of us have read. She's also written a dummies book. She has 20 years of digital marketing experience. She's a pioneer, really, in executing the digital strategies for digital marketing, which she was doing before it was even a recognized term. She's worked with companies, get this, like Meta, Nike, Procter and Gamble, GE, Macy's, Google, and even the United States Senate. I'll let her talk to you about that. She's been featured in many pubs and online in many places. The New York Times, Forbes, Newsweek, Wall Street Journal, NBC, the AP. Krista's very passionate, which is why we wanted to engage her for this episode about digital marketing. And she actually was one of the ones who created, get this, one of the first accredited certification programs in the world. So I think she's got the street cred for presenting what she's going to be presenting today. And with that, I want to bring up Krista Naher and have her give you what you need for your digital marketing. Krista, welcome to the show.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us and learn with us together today. I'm excited to talk to you about this. You'll see I have a ton of passion for these topics. And I'm excited to give you some really actionable and tangible things that you can start doing right away in order to improve your brand and your business online. Before I get
Perfect.
started,
Yep. Have a
oh
great
yeah,
show.
Thank you. Sorry, I just jumped right in there. So, anyways, before we get started, I have a question for you. If you can open up the chat within Zoom, my question for you is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, where would you say your brand is today? How strong is your brand? And so you can just share on a scale of, 1 to 10, or if you have additional insights like we've not thought about it much, or hey, we're kind of consistent, but that's about it. Or we're doing great. We've put a lot of deliberate effort into it. And so I'm excited to accelerate. Just share where you're at in the chat. This is a judgment-free zone because the thing about it is that you get what you focus on in business and in marketing and everything else, right? So in a lot of organizations, the brand isn't a key focus, and that's what causes it to be a little less strategic. So when we think about online reputation management, a lot of people come at it by talking about like online reviews and how you're ranking in Google, and we are going to get to that. But the truth of the matter is that the foundation of your reputation is your brand. And brand is something that I'm very excited about. I started my career working at Procter and Gamble, which is, generally considered one of the best branding companies in the world. They make Tide, Crest, Pampers, Olay, all these brands you've heard of. And the truth is that a strong brand, one, it doesn't happen by accident, but two, the good news for you is that, of course, when we talk about brands, we talk about these big brands, right? But the reality is that you can have a powerful brand in your niche, and it does not need to cost a bunch of money. Right. So when we think about brand, we often think of big brands, and it's easy to feel, well, we're in the B2B space. Maybe it's less important. That's a fair statement. So we could say maybe it feels less important and we don't have those kind of budgets. But here's the thing about branding is that it's not so much about how much money you spend. It's about how deliberate you are with what you do. It's not about how much you spend, it's about how deliberate you are with what you do. And that's really the difference between strong brands and brands that are able to break through the noise and brands that get lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about branding and what makes a strong brand, because when we look at our online reputation, we want to resonate these principles, and they're the same principles that the biggest brands in the world use. So as we go through this, if you have comments or questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. I always like to point out, I'm not the only person here that you can learn from. So if you have some insights that you want to share, or if you have any questions, type them in the chat as we go. You notice my eyes are kind of over here a little bit. That's because I'm keeping my eye on it so we can make this as interactive as possible and all learn from each other as well. So I mentioned I want to start a little bit by talking about brand, which begs the first question of what actually is a brand? Now, a lot of people, when they think about brand, they think about this, and this is actually a definition that I got from AI. And those of us who are strong users, in some ways AI is genius and sometimes it's not as good, right? But this is actually, not bad. There's a few pitfalls, but a brand is more than just a logo or a name. It's the perception and emotional connection that people have to a company, product, or service. It encompasses everything that a company represents, including its values, mission, and the overall experience it offers. And then it's going to share some of the key elements of a brand. What's important to me as you start thinking about this is I do a lot of work in personal branding and teaching people how to build their brands. And one of the quotes we use is, a brand is what someone says about you when you leave the room. And I'm going to show you some models around branding, and it's easy to sometimes feel like really caught up and intimidated by trying to articulate it just so. But the truth of the matter is, the simplest question that ought to be answered by your brand is, why would I pick them? So, and this is why brand resonates everything, right? It supports your sales messages. It should support every single aspect of your online messaging, your website, your email, your social. But what is it that truly makes you different and makes you stand out? And a lot of the times what we see when we look, especially at small businesses, is they have these long, complicated lists of things, right? Oh, we're different because of this and that and whatever. And here's the thing about that. One is if you try and tell someone 5 things, they remember 0. If you try and tell them one thing and you tell them 7 times, they might remember it, right? So there's sort of clarity and simplicity that we need for a brand to break through. So that's kind of the first thing that we want to be thinking about. But the other thing is, a lot of the times, small and medium businesses, when we go to articulate our brands, a lot of the things we talk about aren't really differentiators. Let me give you an example. My company does digital marketing training. When I meet with my team, and I've been doing this almost 20 years, I've had all different people in and out, and they're all smart. And when I meet with my team and we talk about branding, right? What makes us different? What sets us apart? Because the options in my space keep changing, right? Now there's LinkedIn Learning, there's so many more options. So how are we different? What's our unique proposition? And one of the things people always say is, well, it's the expertise that we bring. And that sounds like reasonable enough, right? Nobody would say, well, I want to be trained by non-experts. So it's easy to say, yeah, like it's our expertise. And hopefully you think I have a lot of expertise and I'm smart after you hear me talk for about an hour. I think it's true. We are experts, but that is not a differentiating factor. If you're looking at different training companies and one of them isn't experts, they're like not a real competitor to me because there's most reasonable training companies have experts, right? Are we going to try and say, well, we're more expert than the other people, right? Look at all the speakers that are speaking at this event. They're all experts. How would I convey that I believe I'm more expert, right? It doesn't work that way. So as we think about our brand, what we really want to be thinking about is what is that message that we want to come across about our business that really does set us apart uniquely from our competitors. And I'm going to give you a specific framework of what a strong brand looks like. So I'm just sort of like planting some seeds and giving you some ideas. I'm going to make this even more structured and tangible for you to take away and implement. So again, according to AI, the elements of a brand: identity. So how does it look? Does it always look consistent? And I think to me, this goes beyond just these kind of areas of identity that we see here, but also the imagery, the tone of voice, the things you see on social media. Are they all building a consistent, clear picture? The reputation. So what do people think about the business? Good, bad, otherwise. The values, the experience people have with it, the tone of voice we see, and the brand promise. So this is what AI sort of says a brand is. But what we want to be thinking about as well is, how does a brand get built, right? How do you truly convey what you want to convey? And that's where online reputation really comes into play. In 20 years ago, your impression of a law firm could be based on their front office. Right now, all these things are happening online. So your brand is one of the core aspects that's truly building your reputation. If we think about branding and the value of a brand, there's tons of value that you can find in brands, right? If we look at the biggest brands in the world, there's actually like financial value behind them that's on their financial statements. Apple's brand alone is worth $300 billion. Coca-Cola's brand is worth $70 billion. And what you want to ask yourself is like, what is our brand worth? Do people know us? Are we building that reputation? And I think one of the things that we often see is that we think of brand as just like something that sits in marketing maybe. But the truth is, it's much bigger than that, because it's really how people are perceiving your business at a high level. So what are the elements that make a strong brand? So we use this acronym MADE to define the elements of a strong brand. And this is based on what works for the strongest businesses in the world. The first, and I would argue most important one, is being memorable. The thing is, if people don't remember you or your business, you're never getting anywhere. What makes a business more memorable or less memorable? There's 3 elements that lead to memorability. The first is consistency, right? Think about, I started my career working on Tide laundry detergent. They always use the same logo. It looks the exact same way. It's the exact same colors, and they use it everywhere. Think about the TV commercials you might see for, let's say, Target or The Gap. There's something about the style of these commercials where it's for them even before you see the logo or any identifying features, right? There's something about the style. It's so consistent that you just know it right away by seeing the commercial, even without a logo or anything else there. But consistency is really the key. This is probably one of the biggest things that small businesses miss. We feel like, well, for example, my company, we've been doing a lot more AI training. So if I want to make sure people know that we're doing AI training, I need to consistently hammer that into their heads. Telling them once does not get this message across at all. I need to consistently be showing people our thought leadership in AI, how we're evolving our training to incorporate it in order for them to really start to get that impression in their head. Because nobody cares about your business like you do, right? You act as though like everyone actually reads every email you send out, right? They've seen every post. It's like, oh, we posted about that already. Okay, so like a couple people passively saw it, right? So consistency is really key. Businesses that talk about things like rebranding and changing stuff up or having a new message every single year or a new value proposition. Look at what the biggest brands in the world do. Tide laundry detergent spends millions of dollars a year, and they've done it for over 50 years with one message. It's the best cleaning detergent. That singularity and focus makes it memorable because they're consistent and simple and specific. And that's what leads to memorability. So if you want to be memorable, your online presence has to be specific, simple, and consistent. Specificity means there's a clear single message that you're conveying again and again. If you're like, what is our business about? And you have 5 messages, none of them will land. Excuse me. Instead of choosing different messages, you want to make the same message land in different ways. Think of Tide laundry detergent. Their value proposition is the best clean. The way they get it across is by talking about grass stains, by talking about whitening, by talking about, cold water still getting stuff out. It's all about cleaning, and they find different ways to talk about the same value proposition. So everything you're posting anywhere should be for a clear purpose, and it should all be focused on a specific and simple message that's starting to resonate with your target audience. And then you need to deliver it consistently. The second thing that's important is authenticity. Obviously, your brand should be based on the strengths of your organization. So what are you actually good at? If Tide wanted to be known for the best clean, but they didn't invest in technology and R&D, they wouldn't have the best clean, so that would fall apart, right? Look at what are the actual strengths of your organization. How can you integrate sort of personality into the way your brand comes to life so it feels authentic and actually connects with people beyond just like an empty shell? And you can see some brands, probably not in B2B as much, but if you think of a brand like, let's say, Ben and Jerry's, right? It's a very authentic type of brand where you feel a lot of personality. It's probably, this one is a little more used in consumer brands, but it's still worth thinking about. The next one is differentiated. We already talked about what are your unique selling propositions? What makes you different versus other good alternatives? Why do I pick you? Really think about your points of difference and how you're going to bring that across to people via your reputation. And then the last one is educated. This is really, I just wanted an E, honestly, to make my acronym work, but it's really like credibility. What's the credibility and believability you're bringing to the table? Because that's important as like sort of the foundation of your brand. So as you're thinking about your brand, these are the elements that we want to start resonating everywhere, including in our online reputation, in order to start moving the needle toward broader success. So as we look at what defines a brand online, oftentimes we're looking at all of the different touch points that exist, right? So what's important to keep in mind is that a lot of businesses like yours are built off of sales. They're built off of long-term reputation or relationships. And what's important to keep in mind is that buyer journeys are different now. People don't just meet with a sales rep and sign on the dotted line anymore, right? We know all the studies show people prefer self-directed research. They like to vet things. They'll look stuff up online. And so your online presence is one of the key things that's supporting any other marketing you're doing, whether it's a trade show, your sales team, or anything else. Because studies show people are getting more and more further through the sales process on their own without salespeople. And even when they are engaged, they prefer to do their own research to validate their decision making. And this is true in the B2B space. So when we think about, that's kind of like big picture brand. When we think about online reputation, though, sometimes it's hard to feel like, well, this is really that vital in terms of our specific business, right? Like I might say, well, okay, I get it, branding, but how important is our online reputation truly? How much does it really matter? And I wanted to give you a few ways to quantify this because I find with a lot of businesses that don't prioritize this, a big reason they don't prioritize it is because they don't understand the size of the prize. And I'm a big believer in data and numbers. If you want to convince someone, use strategy and use data. Those are your two best things in your toolbox to win friends and influence people throughout an organization, regardless of what level you're at. So from a data standpoint, there's a couple of things that you can do in order to make the case for this. Now, I'm going to actually show you in a live demonstration how we can actually look at this stuff. So if I'm trying to figure out, well, how important is online reputation to my business? Google has something called the Google Keyword Tool. And if you are not familiar with it, it's a free tool that you can use and it sits within Google Ads. So you do need a Google Ads account to access it. So you need a Google Ads account in order to access it, but you don't need to pay for it. And so if we go into Google Ads and take a look at the Google Keyword Tool, what we'll see within the Google Keyword Tool is that we can actually find out the search volume. So we can find the number of searches for basically any keyword out there or any phrases. So I'm just going to go and click this, discover new keywords. One of the businesses that I was looking at earlier, you can see the ones I've sort of been looking at in your space. Let's just do Blue Yonder. They have a super unique name, so it's going to be easy to see their search traffic. And I know this is a big business, but even for your business, if it's smaller, you'll be able to find stuff like this. So I just searched for Blue Yonder. And now if I scroll down, I can see what people are searching for related to Blue Yonder. So it gives me some additional details in terms of what they're looking for in addition to the keyword. But importantly, I can see the average number of monthly searches. I can see if that number is growing up or down. And the 3-month change and year-over-year change also gives you a really good indicator of the power of your brand. Years ago, I worked with a global consumer goods company based out of Europe. And we worked with this super expensive, fancy data company. And what they found was they were actually able to correlate, like they scientifically, mathematically proved this relationship between brand equity and brand share and searches. Meaning, if let's say we wanted to know, is Coke better than Pepsi? In general, the one with the most search volume has the most market share. There's a strong correlation between searches and actually brand strength or market share. So also, if your numbers are going down in terms of the number of people searching for you, your brand awareness is likely dropping and your market share is likely dropping. If it's going up, that gives you a different indicator. So there's a lot of ways you can use this data, just as a side note, but look this up for your business, right? So if I look for myself, our name is a little tricky because there's a lot of people who are looking for, like, quote, a digital boot camp. It's like how they would describe the type of training they want. But even with boot camp digital as a branded term, and I have it in quotations, so it's only looking at boot camp digital right now, I can see it's 90 searches a month. Now, you might say, well, Krista, that's like nothing, right? So I'm going to actually open it up to just see if there's other stuff with Bootcamp Digital in it that might be relevant. It's not really showing much right now. But here's the deal. So you might say, well, 90 searches sounds like you suck. What are you doing? Here's the thing, though. Even if it's 90 searches, that means, like, I'm just going to round it up to 100. That means 100 people a month are actively looking for my business. These are probably people who want to give me money or are considering giving me money. And what I need to ask myself with my online reputation is, what am I meeting them with, right? What do they find when they go looking for me? And that's where your branded search comes into play. If you're a smaller medium business and you don't have huge numbers here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it not important. 100 people wanting to do business with me. I want to put my best foot forward. I want to meet them with with the best possible positioning of myself so that it's easy to close those deals. So that's 100 people that are actively ready to do business with me where my reputation matters. The second thing that I would do is I would look at my website traffic. Your website traffic is something you can get easily from Google Analytics. That's going to show you how many people are getting to your website. Obviously, people visiting your website, they're also very focused on your online reputation, right? Because they're getting to your website from somewhere and you're starting to build impressions through that. So the amount of website traffic is also an indicator of how important your online presence is. I would also look at things like social impressions. How many people are seeing our brand on social media? Anywhere where I have a profile, I have a Google local listing, a Better Business Bureau profile. I'm listed in a bunch of other directories. So what I'm trying to figure out here is if I want to make the case to invest time and money in my reputation, what's the impact of it? And one of the good things about B2B is that you don't necessarily need huge numbers here, right? If you're selling bigger projects that are especially multi-year, your profit margin is huge. If you get 100 searches, that's 100, I mean, imagine 100 new clients a month, right? For most of us, that's a pretty big number. So think about the size of the prize in order to help make the case for why doing this work is important. And these are just some ways you can easily quantify that with data that's readily available to you. So when we look at your online reputation, one of the questions is sometimes, well, why does it matter? Especially for a lot of businesses in supply chain that maybe aren't marketing first organizations, right? And that's okay. Most B2B is sales first, not marketing first. And there's a reason for that, right? That's how business was traditionally brought in. But why it matters now and why it matters more now specifically is that your online reputation is basically the same as the lobby of your building was, however many years ago, or how important that sign in front of your building is. It's publicly available and people are using it to vet your business and to make decisions about whether or not they want to do business with you. So as a result, your online reputation and your brand strength actually supports not just your marketing efforts, but sales. Right? I guarantee you after a sales meeting, before a sales meeting, during a sales meeting, people are Googling you. If I'm considering taking a meeting from someone off LinkedIn, the first thing I do is I look up their business. What am I doing when I look up their business? I'm trying to assess the credibility. Is this legitimate? Is it big? Is it worth my time? So there's a lot of vetting that's going on across the board. And that's why your online reputation is so important, because it can either increase trust and work for you, it can do nothing, or it can decrease trust. And so many businesses do this well that if you're not doing it well, it's most likely decreasing trust. So how do you manage your online reputation strategically? There's 7 steps behind this. Define your brand, conduct an audit, competitive research, build a plan, monitor, respond, and measure. I'm going to go into each of these in a little bit of detail, and I'll do some more live demos so you can see this at play. So the first step is defining your brand. Now, I asked at the beginning how you would rate your brands. I think on the high end, we got a 6. On the low end, we got a 2. And there's probably, a broad range of you on this call. When it comes to defining your brand, there's all sorts of different models you can use that, it's like, what are the emotional benefits? What are the reasons to believe? What are the functional benefits? All these different things, brand resonance. And, I've filled out I couldn't even tell you how many of these. I don't know if any of you have ever filled this out before or filled out something like this, but it can feel like a lot if you've never done it. And some of these things you're maybe at best guessing at, right? You're like, I don't know what our root strength is. Let's put something there, right? So these models work. I would say they're for more mature businesses, typically, where you're really looking to hone in stuff you already know. The most simplistic thing that you need to do is just be able to answer 4 questions. What is the reputation you want to create for your business? So think of it like this. I go to your booth at a trade show, I interact with you, I Google you online, and somebody says to me, "Oh, business X, why would you consider them? What makes them special?" And that answer is the reputation you're creating, right? What do they do and what makes them special? Those are the two things you want in a strong reputation. So if somebody says to me, "Oh, what does the, Global Supply Chain Marketing Summit do?" I should be able to say what it does and what makes it different. It's uniquely set up for the supply chain industry marketers. So what does it do? What makes it different? Next, you want to think about what are the things you want your audience to believe? What is your unique selling proposition? So what makes you different? And then what are your reasons to believe? What makes that believable, right? Maybe you have technology, maybe you've been around 20 years, those types of things. How should your brand come across? I think a lot of businesses try and be funny on social media because people think that's what you're supposed to do. Absolutely not true. Um, it's when you think about your brand, you need to think about how does it come across and be deliberate about it. I see a lot of businesses that get into TikTok and suddenly they start making these like ridiculous narrative type stuff like influencers do. For me, that's completely off brand. We're a serious brand. We help marketers get smarter. Why would I be acting out some stupid TikTok trend? How does that make people think that I know a lot to teach them about marketing? Right? So when you have your brand character, which you can build off of archetypes, you're able to really understand how you want to come across. And then we get into your deployment, right? The deployment is kind of like your brand visualization tool pack. So you have your color, logos, icons. I think especially with social content, you want to have some image styles and ideas around the type of look and feel of the imagery you use. Font, you should have a defined tone of voice and also a clear description. When I go to your LinkedIn page, let's say, and I spend 20 seconds browsing it, what did I take away? And what did that tell me about you, right? You want a deliberate description you can deploy everywhere. So I saw a question come in the Q&A panel. Is online equivalent to social media or is this website focused? Great question. The truth is your online reputation is all of these things, right? So I would say online does not equal social media. Online equals anything about you online, whether you created it or not. So it does equal both social media, your website, user-generated content, etc. And I'll show you that more in a few minutes when I give you a demonstration of how to evaluate your reputation. But part of the reason defining your brand is so important up front is that when it comes to implementing, you want to be super strategic, right? And to be strategic means that there's a purpose behind everything. There's a clear purpose behind everything you post everywhere. So if I look at your LinkedIn page or your social presence, it's clearly creating an impression. It's not just a random spattering of posts of employees and trade shows and whatever else it is you're doing. I look at it and I'm like, man, they're really known for customer service because the resonance of those messages is about how much you care for customers, right? So the idea is you build your brand deliberately and then you resonate it through every touch point on digital and off, right? So once you've got an idea of your brand, next we get into the audit stage, and I'm going to show you a few examples of how to do an audit. But I want to just quickly cover what you will define in an audit. Now, at the end of this workshop, I have a QR code you can scan that has a checklist with all of this in it. So if you're going to write this down, you don't need to. I'm going to give you a checklist that's like super easy to use that has this included in it. So when it comes to what to define in an audit, what you want to think about is these clear things. One, are you consistent? Is your brand consistent everywhere, and is your message consistent? And then basically we're looking at a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? You can go a little bit deeper and look for things like, what is your ability to dominate the results? Are most of them things you own, and are they making you look good? What shows up in suggested search? People also ask, what is your owned presence? What's your review presence? And what's your social presence? So these are specific things we'll look for to try and audit. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. And then we have our MADE rating, which is those 4 elements of a strong brand: memorable, authentic, differentiated, and educated. So the key elements we'll look for is, are we consistent? Is it simple? Is it authentic and strengths-based? Are we differentiating, and are we building our credibility? So this is what I'm going to use when I go to do my actual audit. But let me show you how you would go about doing this and some of the places you can go to actually effectively audit your brand. So I'm just going to use Blue Yonder as an example because they have a really distinctive name. So it's kind of easy to do an audit. And you may look at them and already be saying to yourself, yeah, well, they have like 1 billion times the budget that I have. True, but none of these things take money. They just take deliberateness, right? It's about focus. It's not about doing all this stuff you're not doing. So I just came and searched for them online. Now, the first thing you typically want to do when you're doing a search, so you see I typed in Blue Yonder into my search box, and do you see what shows up here? All of this, and then you have people also ask and people also searched for. Ideally, the people also searched for is most likely your top competitors. The people also ask, and these suggested search results though, this is based on user behavior. So what's always important to keep in mind with Google is Google's a mirror, right? It's reflecting back what people want, right? Google's not trying to direct you. They don't have like this mission to get people to all look up India, for example, or to promote Glassdoor. It's based on what did most people put next after they put in this company name. So it's giving you insights around what people are looking at. I would personally click on all of these afterwards to see what shows up for all of them. Reviews is probably a big one that we'll often see, and I'm surprised reviews doesn't show up for them. It shows up for most businesses, but Glassdoor, careers, revenue, employee count, I would look up all these things to see what they look like. But let's go back and say, well, what are we looking at in the search results? And essentially, we're trying to evaluate these as a normal consumer would. So take your marketing hat off, forget what you're trying to tell people, and just ask yourself, like, what would I think if I'm like considering using them, right? What would I think if this is what I saw? What's positive, what's negative? So this is what you're doing for your own business, right? So I'm like, okay, first the website, well, what's showing up here? Interesting, they already have AI right in the description. So maybe that's showing they're innovative. Now we can see what are the extensions that show up. People also ask. In their case, they have what's called a Google Knowledge Panel, which is this section here. We can look up, well, what social networks are showing up, click on all of these, take a look at them. The way that I evaluate a social network is if I were to open their LinkedIn, so open your own LinkedIn, look at it like a consumer. Okay, global leader in digital supply chain transformation. It's crystal clear. Well, maybe it's crystal clear what they do, right? Then they talk about who their target audiences are: retailers, manufacturers, logistics service providers. So in their first 2 sentences, I know what they are and I know who they serve. Then I'm just going to do a real quick scan of their posts and try and figure out, okay, based on their posts, what impression would I have about this business? Well, I would say in just 2 seconds, they're highly professional, first of all, right? Everything kind of looks well orchestrated. It looks fairly professional. I see AI right away, future, right? Driving the future AI. You see tech, you see innovation. Those are the 2 things that I would think about right away: tech, innovation. And they're very forward thinking. And all of that in 2 seconds, right? That's the impression they're building just in a couple seconds. So what you want to do is start looking through this content, see what's showing up, click around on all of it, and ask yourself, what impression is this creating? And then you're going to plot this information on that SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And some things you'll come back with are simple. Man, we just need a better description, and we need a consistent description everywhere. Some of it might be a little more complicated. Take a look at this, for example. You see videos are showing up right in their search results. Now, they have pretty good videos showing up here, but let me show you another one I looked at. Here we go, e-shipping. So one of the things about Google, by the way, is they're prioritizing videos a ton in business search results right now. And if I look at these videos that show up for e-shipping, right, none of these represent the business super well. So this might add to my threats, okay, or my weaknesses. We don't have a clear YouTube strategy. So we don't have none of the videos, only one of the videos showing up is actually from our channel. And it's like a 30-second ad. It's not even a compelling piece of content. So now what I'm doing as I'm looking through my business is I'm just looking for these opportunities, right? I'm looking for different things that are going to give me insights into what impression I'm building with things. Interesting, I can see right away here how they describe themselves on YouTube is inconsistent with what we saw on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn started with AI and stuff like that. So there's consistency issues we see already. Another thing, let's say I was in the same category, right? Because you'll also do this for competitors. So you're going to analyze yourself this way. You're also going to analyze your competitors this way. So if I was a different company and I see, oh, they have this like Forbes present, that makes them look important and legitimate, I might click on this and try and figure out how could I get one of these? What would that look like? We see their Gartner reviews, 4.3, not great, not bad. Maybe I need Gartner reviews, right? So if this is my business, I'm like, how do I get this score up? It's the first review site that showed up and it's just mediocre. If I'm a different business, I might want to say, well, what if I could beat them? One of the things that I realized, we did a competitive reputation audit and we have 4.7 or 4.8 stars on Trustpilot with almost 500 reviews. Even the training company is much bigger than us. They don't have as many reviews and they don't have the same positivity scores. So we actually made a chart comparing the reviews of different online certifications, right? Smart. And it makes us look good. But we found the gap by doing this exercise, right? So what we're doing here is basically taking a look at what is their reputation comprised of? What are things that we can learn from this? So if it's your business, you're looking for your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then your next step is to go through your competitors' businesses. And when you go through your competitors' businesses, you want to look at the same strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to start getting a feel for what can you do better or differently. One of the other things we tend to see a lot of, which I'm not seeing right now, but be aware of it for yours, excuse me, is we're seeing more and more Reddit and discussion forums showing up in search results. And that's a part of Google's algorithm. It's deliberately skewing toward that type of content. So just something to be aware of in terms of how you're evaluating yourself. So you want to evaluate yourself, look at all of this stuff, then evaluate your competitors. The other thing that I would do is I would do an AI evaluation. So go to your AI tool of choice. Ideally, choose one that is updated with lifetime internet suggestions. But what does AI think of you, right? So tell me about Bootcamp Digital, the company. And I'm going to see what it thinks about my company. Then I could say, tell me the top 5 digital marketing companies. Tell me, I can go dig deeper and deeper. And what I'm looking at is what's the reputation I'm creating. I could ask it, I'm all caps, what makes Bootcamp Digital different than other options? So you see, I can use AI to also see, because AI is essentially looking all over the internet and synthesizing that information back to you. So big opportunity to use AI there as well. So essentially what you want to do in the audit stage is audit yourself, what shows up, what impression are you creating, look at your competitors, what shows up, what opportunities or threats do you see as a result of that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use this information to start building your own plan and thinking about what you're going to actually do to improve your online reputation. Now, a typical online reputation comes down to a handful of key assets. The first is your website, which we didn't get into in too much detail. Obviously, it should show up at the top of search engine results. But the first thing I would do is look at your website with a clean lens. Is this conveying our unique value proposition? What would I think if somebody, what would somebody think if they saw this, right? The next thing you're going to do is look at search engine optimization. Is your site optimized correctly, right? Do you have the right descriptions that show up in those search engine results? Are you ranking for the right kinds of things, right? If you search for, I'll just show you this really quickly, but if you search for boot camp digital reviews, and this is very deliberate, so we know in our space, a lot of people are looking up reviews. And the reason is any kind of online products like this, people have trust issues with because a lot of people have been burned. So if you look at reviews, what you'll see is one, Trustpilot shows up. This is where we deliberately get reviews for our business. But then also you'll see below that, we optimized our own site to show up with testimonials. If we view this as even more important, our next step on top of that would be to add review plugins that would make our site rank even higher. But the other thing we've done, because we know reviews are a big factor for our target audience, you'll notice there's all sorts of different sites where we've really made a point to get reviews so that anytime you look at our business anywhere, you're going to see positivity. And that's a very deliberate reputation that we've worked hard to build probably over the last 7 years is when we really started focusing on that. So what you want to do is start looking at the different assets at your disposal that you can use to start growing your reputation. And you're sort of going to make like an action list of this. So I have my website, SEO, search engine marketing is a little different. Search engine marketing is where I say, okay, well, what ranks in search engines where I need to control my reputation a little better? One of the things, and I don't know if you caught it when I showed you Bootcamp Digital and Bootcamp Digital reviews, is these discussion forums like Reddit show up all the time. And we've never made a point to focus on it. So we actually are now, we've created a Bootcamp Digital profile and I have a profile. We're being authentic and transparent, but we're deliberately talking about Bootcamp Digital to add it into the mix because we know these are showing up in search engine results. So they're a part of our reputation, right? If you're searching for Bootcamp Digital and you see a Reddit thread that's like, where should I go and get training? And we're not even mentioned. Now you're like, well, maybe they're not the best choice. You're going to look at content you need to create. So what other content do you want to create that's relevant to your business? You want to look at, so for me in content, I'm looking at things like creating more YouTube videos because those YouTube videos show up and I don't really like how they look, right? They don't look great. I may also try and get like media mentions or PR. So I'm going to create content. I'm going to focus on some review sites. For us, I showed you how that's really important. For B2B, I think in general, you want a good Google listing with some reviews and choose one other site and try and get a bunch of reviews. People are vetting you. This is the world we live in. They're like, is this legitimate? Is it good? Like, builds my confidence that I'm making a good decision, right? And so it's really important to look at those review sites, even in this space. Look at social media, online profiles on other sites. We have profiles on like Crunchbase, the Better Business Bureau, etc. So you'll want to start building a plan of how you're going to use all of these touch points in order to elevate your brand. And that's what you really want to be thinking about. Then you're going to take all these touch points and we map them, or your plan, and we map them on what we call the investment impact continuum. How much time and effort is it going to take? And how big of an impact is it going to make? So when the first time I did this, we just needed to be more consistent in our social media. So I was like, oh, like our profiles are completely inconsistent. I don't know what the main value proposition is. That's low hanging fruit. We just needed to write a description and populate it on like 7 websites. It was a 2-hour job. So that's low hanging fruit. Right now, I'm like, I think Reddit is a huge opportunity. It's showing up in search results. AI trains off of Reddit. I'm going to put that in the ROI center. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. It's not as hard as SEO. And I think it can have a big impact based on how I'm seeing the predominance of Reddit everywhere. So, what you're going to try and do is sort of map everything on this quadrant to help you get focus on where you want to spend your time. I see a question in the Q&A. How important is your SEO ranking if your business relies primarily on client to client recommendations? So, do at the very beginning, I talked about how you can see the number of searches on the Google keyword tool and you can look at your website traffic. Look at those two numbers to answer that question. I think if you're getting any volumes of searches and if you're getting any amount of traffic, it's important because it means human beings who want to do business with you are looking for you. So you need to show up when they search for you. Now, from a bigger SEO picture, how much time do you want to spend on SEO in general? That's a bigger question, but the good news is in our next session, we're diving into SEO specifically, and we can talk about what leads to rankings and how difficult it is, which I think will help you to answer that question better than I can in 30 seconds in the context of this call. But if anyone searches for you, if you get traffic to your website from direct sources, search is important. And I guarantee almost every business does, unless you're like totally new in some kind of other strange business. So then you want to monitor your reputation. I always recommend just three things, right? Set up a Google alert so you know if someone talks about you. Do a quarterly audit, the audit that I just showed you. Do that every single quarter just to check like Google rankings change, other stuff changes. And then we do an annual refresh where we look at the presence we've created. Do the headers still match? Have we changed our product focus? Do we need to add AI anywhere? So we have an annual process where we go about updating our presence so that there's just some like rhythm behind it. And it doesn't, 5 years later, we're like, oh my gosh, that YouTube channel looks horrible, right? So that's what you want to be thinking about. Responding is probably not as much of a thing in your specific space because you're probably not getting as many comments, but do make sure you're responding to everything. And then finally, set KPIs. Make sure that you have metrics in place. If you don't measure something, you're not going to do it. So think about what are some of your goals when you're going about this, right? Maybe it's that everything on the first page is positive. Maybe it's that there's 4 review sites that show up where you have a minimum of 5 reviews and over 3 stars. That's what you want to be thinking about when you're implementing your strategies. So set metrics. A KPI is just a nice word for metrics. But when you start looking at your priorities and your plan, whatever your plan looks like, set metrics on how you'll measure the impact so that you really know if you're making the impact that you want to make from it. So we covered a lot of ground. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to be able to start thinking about this strategically. And really, this is the playbook in order to start improving your reputation.
Thank you, Krista. That was phenomenal. My goodness gracious, that was great. And I am positive everybody got a lot of value out of that. We are sadly out of time. We have a couple of things. Like you said, we've got a QR code to give people the deck and some checklists. We've got episode 2 they can register for. We're going to get to that in a minute. But before we do, can you take 1 minute, 60 seconds, and tell these folks what do they need to remember from today? And more importantly, what do they need to do?
Yeah. So I think the thing that I would tell you to remember is that your online reputation matters. I don't care if everything comes from sales. I don't care if you're telling me, most people don't go out and just like randomly find us. That's not how our sales happen. They are using your online reputation to vet you and they're sharing it with others. So that's what you need to take away is that I'm telling my boss, oh, this is who we're using for that. And I send them a link to your website and it looks like it's from 1990. And they're like, what, really? Right? That's what we're thinking about here. So your online reputation matters, even if it's not directly sales, it's changing people's opinions. What can you do? Use this 7-step process. Depending how important it is, you can spend a couple weeks on it, or you could do it all in 2 or 3 hours if you just kind of want to get the ball rolling. But take the time to just go through each step. You'll literally be mind blown about how much you can learn in a short amount of time just by looking at this stuff. I get most of my best marketing strategies from this exact activity.
Cool. Thank you so much. Your next steps for those of you who are watching and listening are to scan this QR code or go to this URL. Now, don't panic. If you don't scan the code, we're going to send you the URL and the instructions within 24 hours. So everybody who's registered and watching this will get that. But if you've got a minute, go ahead and do that now. Secondly, we want you to be able to reach out to Krista. We know with the Global Supply Chain Marketing Group Professional Development Initiative, you guys have asked us how we can get a hold of the people, the gurus, the subject matter experts. So we're giving you that. And Krista has given us no shortage of ways of getting a hold of her. So if you need to get a hold of Krista, that is on you. And we will also send this out in that email for everyone who has registered. And then finally, do not hesitate to register for episode 2. We're going to talk about SEO for the supply chain and what works in 2025. We'll give you the date and time of that also in the email that we send out. But if you go to the registration page, it'll have the date and time on it. And oh, by the way, we will be talking about AI in this session. So Krista will talk about AI in the online branding and online communication going forward. And with that, I just want to once again say, Krista, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Wonderful show today. Looking forward to episode 2. And for everybody out there, thank you. And remember, our job in supply chain marketing is to get people to know who we are, make ourselves more well known, because at the end of the day, instead of knocking on doors, they should be knocking on yours. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone.